So they will basically be presenting this data, give you guys a little bit of an inside baseball on how this stuff works. ASCO is a big conference, right? People aren't stupid. They kind of know what these results will look like. Now it says it's currently still ongoing enrollment, but I don't think that's right. So typically what'll happen is there are people that know what these results are right now. People talk about that. And it's sort of it's often interesting to sort of see what people are thinking. There's a community of people that talk about this kind of thing and what their expectations might be. That's why, you sort of have this consensus of what's going to happen at this meeting. Now, in my experience, let's take a look at 𝗟𝗏 actually. 𝗟𝗏 response rate might be helpful to sort of see 60% response rate. Woof, that's pretty good. But, and you can see the same sort of thing. In ALK rearrangements of 3 to 5% in patients, right? 60% objective response rates, but I don't think the duration was very good. You could have a pretty fast resistance building up and the tumors coming back. No, they're not bad. That's for Ross. So if you have duration of a year, that's good enough. I mean, you're basically giving 60% of these patients who would die otherwise a new lease on life. And that's median. Remember, median, some of them will be shorter, some of them will be longer. But on average, it's about a year. But for the subset of patients that have, say, 3 or 4 year, that's pretty incredible. And then whatever their mutation is that's resistant, they can maybe try a different TRK inhibitor. So that could be kind of interesting. So basically, we'll be getting the results of this study in 2 weeks. The stock will, I guarantee you, will either rise a lot or fall a lot in 2 weeks. And problem is the model. I mean, so 𝗟𝗏 took 3 or 4 years to hit $500 million. And I'm being pretty generous here on all these assumptions. They may not pay taxes for a while, but even still.
Is it their only product for now?
Yep.
Okay, so usually that's how drug development is done by like smaller companies. They focus on one thing.
And these guys started their company 4 or 5 years ago.
Wow.
And so you can see
pretty
though.
Impressive.
Yeah, no, this is pretty impressive. But they bought the drug for like $1 million. So and now it's worth $1 billion. We've had to raise a lot of money in between, but yeah, it's sort of, I've done this kind of thing before. You can see that, again, 𝗟𝗏 only is useful for lung cancer, whereas this drug, there's TRK mutations in almost every cancer. So I mean, there's no.
Why is 𝗟𝗏 only used for lung cancer?
I don't know. I don't think ALK mutations happen in non-lung cancers, to be honest. Okay. I think that there's one other tumor where it happens, but that's really it. They did their clinical trials just in lung cancer, which sort of limited. So here you've got 8 more, but although I think the biggest one is going to be lung, it looks like. But depending on the results, I mean, you saw that one response rate was in soft tissue sarcoma, but 𝗟𝗏 works in 60% of patients. So we really don't know. Oh, it doesn't have options? That's interesting. Some stocks don't have options traded, but we can request that options get traded, but it takes, I've done that a few times, and they'll start listing options based on one investor's request, which is a little crazy, but it does work. And I'm guessing the data is pretty good if they're going to present it at ASCO and the whole thing, but pretty good. And what the market's expecting good data. Needless to say here. Looks like they have this glioblastoma, which is a brain cancer, most common form, I believe, of brain cancer, glioblastoma multiforme. And so if you want to look for the abstract, they presented this. Might even be on the website, so we may not need to find it, but here's a different TRK inhibitor from TP Therapeutics, but I don't see. Let me look on the Loxo site, because they're comparing themselves to some pretty big drugs here. Ibrance is Pfizer's new drug. Jakafi is one of the huge drug, 2 or 3 billion. So it'll be interesting to see. But here there's 7 patients. Let's see if we got the results. I'm guessing this is what we're talking about with the 7 patients. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Phase 1, 7 patients. And you can see they have seven have responded. It's pretty incredible. I don't know what MASC is actually, but GIST is gastrointestinal stromal tumor, soft tissue sarcoma. That's the patient they probably talked about. Thyroid cancer. Here's the lung cancer patient. It's not quite a partial response, but not terrible. And you can see that all of these patients have had these responses for more than a year, which is great. Now, what the heck is MASC? MAS cancer. I don't think it's that, is it? Mammary analog secretory carcinoma? I never heard of that. I really have never heard of that cancer, which is somewhat, it's a little concerning because 3 of the patients of the 7 are that random tumor that I've never heard of. It's a little weird, but otherwise oh wow, that's sad to see. Infantile fibrosarcoma. Only 100 cases a year in the US. Well, if they can get 6 out of 7 responses, they'll be in good shape, but I don't think that'll be likely. Yeah, so you see they got this thing in 4 years. I'm talking about, what's fast and what isn't.
Wow.
Pretty fast.
Yeah.
So, been an investor involved in almost all of them. It says 5,000 late line or eligible patients per year in the US. Okay, so let's work on that. 2,000 to 5,000 late line eligible patients per year. Do a little math there, a little more sophisticated than just copying the 𝗟𝗏𝗀𝗎 number. Oops. Track plus mutations. Oh, I actually did this up here. It's 1,500 to 5,000, but there's so it's 3,250 in the middle, but there's Europe and Japan. So maybe we'll say 3,250 times 2, be conservative. 6,500 patients. Let's see. And so price, well, some of the new cancer drugs are about $100K a year, so let's put in 100. So revenue, well, penetration is also important. Usually you can get about 70% of the number of the patients to take the drug, and you get paid on almost all of them in this situation. Pretty similar numbers to kind of what we were thinking. Some of these drugs are 150K now, and if the estimate is, we have to figure out if this estimate is reasonable or not. I mean, some of the estimate was 1,500 to 6,000, and that's only late line patients. There's probably earlier patients as well. But you can see that the numbers are not that. So if it's 6,000 patients, then you're talking about, a lot bigger. But the price would probably have to come down a little bit. Divide this by 1,000 to normalize it a little, so maybe the price comes down a little bit, but that's closer to $1 billion drug. And I took the discount rate down a little bit because I think the probability that this will get FDA approval and actually it'll all come true, so to speak, is pretty realistic. So in terms of the revenue curve, it's probably, like I said, about double 𝗟𝗏𝗀𝗎. You can see that the curve is usually takes about 3, 4, 5 years to get up there. So it'd be $123 stock, which is still, that's like triple the current stock price. I mean, current stock price is 46. Not a bad gain. If this does happen. I mean, it's what, 200% gain, which is a triple, a little less than that. Not bad, at all. It still will have to be $1 billion drug, which again I think is somewhat reasonable from what I've seen. But 12,000 patients, you'd have 70% of them on drug, paying you $100K a year. I mean, the prices of these things just keep going higher and higher, so you could conceivably get a little bit more juice out of it. And I'm not counting like Japan and other countries. And if you think about 50,000 patients with what they say 3% track mutations, that's just lung. So this could be an underestimate, 3,200. It could be more like 6,000 in the US, 6,000 in Europe, 3,000 in Asia, at least, and that's all last line salvage therapies. So it could be a little bigger, in which case, it's like a triple. I mean, the market's sort of caught on to this company and this drug, but there's still some upside, it looks like. They may have a second or third drug, which I wouldn't be in too much of a rush to assume that those are worth anything. And obviously there's risks. If we think that it'll be, well, because think about this. I mean, the patients who don't respond are not going to get on the drug. They'll all try it, but they won't. If they don't respond, they won't stay on the drug for very long. So the price may come down as a result. If you have half the patients. Now, on the flip side, some of the patients that do respond, they may stay on the drug for years. I mean, we see that those patients were on the drug for a year, but they could be on the drug for 3 or 4 or 5 years, which could make this an even bigger medicine. 𝗬𝗢𝗢𝗍, Novartis' drug, got up to 3 or 4 months, 3 or 4 years of patients who are on the medicine for 3 or 4 years. So the price would be the number of patients on drug. You'd have to calculate it, but it would go up substantially. And 𝗬𝗢𝗢𝗍 got up to, I want to say, $4 billion before it went generic. We got to look at the patent as well, because we're assuming this 2030 time frame, and I don't know if that's right or not. 𝗬𝗢𝗢𝗍, certainly the number of patients went up substantially because of the number of years that they had to stay on. So it looked more like that. And if you did that, the numbers become quite a lot better. You're talking about a potential 10x for the company. But these are all kind of rosy scenarios. If the data is not good in 2 weeks, then it's a bit of a different story. But certainly they have a new drug, Loxo 195, that's even better than Loxo 101, RET inhibitor as well. But in terms of the data itself, the 7 patients, I don't like these MASC patients. They don't need this level of data. I mean, 6 out of 7 is quite a good response rate, 80-something%, right? And some of these patients are up there on 2 years. So that's the patient we were talking about earlier who had the lung tumor, the lung metastases disappear. He's now on drug for 2 years and had looks like, an 80% reduction, if you will, 70-80% reduction in tumor burden. And there's even a patient that did better than that, but the others are more partial. But they've been on drug for over a year, so that's pretty good. That seems certainly like an exciting opportunity. There's a lot of other track inhibitors we got to worry about, though. I think Pfizer has one. 𝗕𝗙 Therapeutics. And their drug is called 𝗕𝗙𝗢𝗍𝗓. Track seems a little more attractive than ALK. I'm nervous that, if it's just a repeat of ALK, the stock is already there. And they have to pay Array a royalty. I don't know what that royalty is. I estimated it at 10%, but it could be more. So I don't know. This is a good first draft for sure. This is not enough to even think about making an investment. I think very carefully about this stuff. It's nowhere near enough research. It's definitely a really good start for first looking at a company. I think we actually got somewhat in depth. We didn't jot down the phase 1, 6 out of 7 PR, 3 massive tumors.
So for more research, would you look into the other TRK inhibitors?
Yep, we definitely would have to do that. We would probably talk to the doctors that did this study.
Okay.
See what they thought. We'd have to pay them.
You'd have to pay them.
Yes. We meaning the company. See if there are any secrets to the trial that we didn't, that weren't disclosed. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
We'd have to read the license agreement or whatever we can find to see what the array I usually mark this stuff yellow in the model for next steps. The competition I don't worry about too much. It's important for sure, but it's really important actually, but typically they're not as important as people think. But that's a long story. I'm just giving a very... the other drugs are important to look at too. I think they have a bunch of them. So.
The other drugs from that same company?
Yep, from Loxo, yeah. They have an even better TRK inhibitor, it looks like. Oh yeah, so here is going to give you some of the inside baseball. What a lot of people do, I'm not a big fan of it, but people do it, is this study does not have a placebo. That means that these clinical trial sites, UCLA, Stanford, UChicago, Mass Gen, Dana-Farber, MSK here in New York, this guy 𝗟𝗏𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀 and say, "Oh, Mr. Drillin, how are those patients doing?" And he'll say, "Well, I had 5 patients in the trial, and I'm not at liberty to disclose the results." And you say, "Dr. Drillin, what is your favorite bottle of wine?" "Let's order 3 of those." At the end of the night, Dr. Drillin has told you that 4 out of his 5 patients had a partial response, and next morning you go and you buy Loxo stock. Now, there's a lot of people get in trouble for doing that kind of thing, and I don't advocate it. I think it's very, very dangerous to do that. Now, if everyone's doing it, you kind of feel like you're at a disadvantage. But I'd much rather be at a disadvantage than alternative found to have broken the law. But, the question is, I think it's best to just sort of stay away from it. People do that. And here's MD Anderson, which is in Houston, Dr. David Hong. A lot of these hedge funds, what they'll do is they'll build long-term relationships with some of these places. So they'll have known these doctors for many, many years. And one study site is not enough to have all the information, right? I mean, one of these, there's 150 patients, there's 30 sites, so there's 5 patients probably per site. And in the really old days, you could call around 10, 20 doctors and get every single one of them. One guy here is wisely saying that's just channel checking, but there's a difference between channel checking and insider information, and I think one has to be, it really is one and the same if you do it enough if you call every single hospital, you get the results prematurely. Nobody else has those results. It's, just the smell test. If anything even remotely smells funny, you should not be doing it. That's kind of my rule. And if that means that you just can't look at the stock, that means you just can't look at the stock, and that's fine. But there was an opportunity at some point to buy the stock when it was $20, and you don't need insider information to say that's a good investment. So it just kind of have to be smart about how you do it. And if the market takes a nosedive because of Trump or something like that, and you get a chance to buy the stock at 30, that would be nice. Or look, if the stock went up to, let's say the stock went to 100, and you said, well, I think there's a better track inhibitor out there, then you could short it. So there's a lot of, you got to watch hundreds of stocks and then pounce when there's an opportunity that's really, really good. That just, there's no doubt as to the opportunity. Otherwise, you kind of are getting small returns, But if you buy this when, if you saw this before, clearly, at $1 billion, this is no longer a giveaway. It might be worth $2 billion, it might be worth $5 billion, but the person who bought this drug and started this company with $1 million, that's kind of where you want to. That's kind of where you want to be. You want to be that person, not the dingus like me, saying, "Oh, maybe I'll buy one share, 1% of this company for $12 million, and hope that or 0.5% for $6 million, and hope that doubles, so I can make $6 million." That's not such a bad place to be. But the person who bought it for $1 million and their stake is now worth $200 million. That's a big gain, and it just kind of required not a little, but a ton of hard work and a ton of maybe some skill and some luck too. But it's not something that's impossible. And there's for every company like this, well, let's look at the other company, Ignyta, RxDX, their market cap, they have a similar drug, almost the exact same thing. It's a TRK inhibitor, but their market cap is only 500 million. And I think it's generally considered to be the maybe inferior TRK inhibitor, but it may actually just be earlier. Loxo sort of has leapfrogged them. And I want to say Pfizer has a TRK inhibitor. Let's take a look at that. 06273340. Exciting name. Looks like Purdue has one. What is this? Purdue acquires TRK inhibitor. They bought it from Pharma. That's fascinating. We got another competitor we gotta keep track of. Blueprint T. Okay, so they did note the TP drug. It's honestly a good thing when all these companies want to make your the same thing you're targeting. That's sort of, it's better than the alternative where everyone's like, yeah, it's not going to make you any money. You don't want that. You want Pfizer and Merck and everyone to say, I want a piece of this thing. What's interesting about Loxo is that they only have their array partnership, but other than that, they're a free agent. They have 100% of the drug. So if you're Merck or you're Novartis or you're any of these companies that want to build a cancer company, they don't have a partner. I mean, they have Array, but I don't think Array has that big of a royalty. Pretty exciting opportunity if you're one of those companies like Pfizer, Bristol Myers that really interested in making great new cancer drugs. It's so interesting. They tried to study this drug for pain. Bizarre. Pain drug and a cancer drug. Looks like the only thing they've done is pain. I mean, maybe I've got the wrong drug. Peripherally restricted pan-TRK inhibitor for the treatment of pain. Tropomyosin. Is that the same TRK? Or, I don't know if that's the same TRK.
No, it's different.
Yeah. Two TRKs.
No, tyrosine. Yeah, it's the tropomyosin is that muscle, part of the muscles and stuff.
And this is, what's...
It's also a kinase, but it's different.
Tropomyosin. No, it's the same.
Well, also the other one?
I think so. So yeah, it looks like maybe some pain indication as well. Let's see, phase 1 stopped due to significant adverse events when they had a prior one. Personality changes, sleep disturbances, etc. So that's going to be a side effect for the cancer patients. Fascinating that would work for pain. It'd be quite an honor. Quite an honor to be published.
Would be.
In that journal. But regardless, you can see how they went from a hit to lead.
Yeah, hit to lead optimization.
Cool, they have the docking also.
I mean, I'm more interested in the biology and the fact that there is this
pain effect.
Yeah, and the translocation, you could have the when it's it's not an oncogene normally. It's only when it's translocated and fused to another.
Oh, okay.
Oncogene,
so it's not really the same. It's not the same protein, but it's like
sort of
fused with.
Exactly, fused to an oncogene, and then it becomes like a promoter for the oncogene, I think.
Yeah, that's a crazy thing about cancer, right? It keeps like mutating and mutating, and you have like thousands of mutations.
This could be a great pain drug. The track to successful pain treatment.
I'm just the best sense of humor.
Yeah, so let's see. Okay, yeah, tanezumab works. It's an NGF inhibitor, but it looks like Pfizer stopped developing it for cancer. Is it PFE? PF062733. Let's see what one way you can tell if the trial worked or not is to see what the last trial they did was. 2012, 2013, 2014, and 2015. So if it really was looking good, they'd be doing a lot more clinical trials on it. They don't just stop, doing clinical trials if it's exciting. So the pain route may have run dry. But we could buy the Pfizer drug and do our own cancer studies with them.
Let's do it.
Well, it is the kind of thing I do. I mean, it's just you'd have to be comfortable that there's a role for it being a few years behind. But it'd be at least a year or two behind. But I can call Pfizer tomorrow. Anyway, it's fun to analyze a drug company I haven't looked too closely into.